Now we are back on the record, live full public session.
Good morning. For the record, this is Assistant Attorney General Christopher Aguilar. The board has been in executive session to discuss a property matter regarding Lowry Ranch in Arapahoe County pursuant to CRS 24-6-4023A1, as well as a director annual review pursuant to CRS 24-6-4023B1. The discussion was limited to those noticed items and no decisions were made. We are back on the record.
We're ready to proceed with our agenda.
Thank you. All right. So at this point, I would like to open up the meeting for public comments on non-agenda items.
And so for folks in the room, if you're here to make comments on items that are not on our published agenda for the day, now's your chance to do that. Anybody that's here for that? No hands in the room. Folks online, this is that opportunity. Again, if you are attending to make comments to this board on items that are not part of our published agenda today, use the raise hand feature and we'll bring you forward so that you can address this commission. No hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And this time I'd also like to acknowledge the thoughtful public comments that have been received by the commissioners in writing prior to the meeting. Thank you for your effort to submit those. All right now, Commissioner, or I'm not elevating you, Commissioner. Director Rose Marino. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair Rowe. We do have an announcement that Assistant Director Chris Smith is going to.
Yeah, thank you. And so, yeah, today is the final day of a leadership program that is put on by DU that Crystal Coranda and David Rodenberg are attending. This is a program that I think was originally developed for CPW, but has been expanded to many of the other DNR divisions. It's 2 3-day sessions. And so the first session was last month. It was offsite at a sort of a remote location in Teller County, where everybody who participates in ropes course and trust falls and things like that. And then the 3 days this week we're at DU at the campus, and Assistant Director Massey and Director Rose Marino and I are going to go to the graduation this afternoon. But this program, I think we typically recommend 2 people from our staff every year to go to this program. And I think at this point, probably over 10 people from our staff have attended this. And the feedback that I've received from people that have attended is that this is just a really good land-based leadership program that is designed not just for managers, but also for people to be leaders within their position. So line of business positions, those types of things. It's also a great opportunity to network with other divisions within DNR. So it's a great thing. And I'm really excited that we as an organization continue to promote this and send our staff.
Excellent. Any other announcements?
That's it.
No, thank you very much. All right, then I'd like to welcome up Aaron Ray for the director's report.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Aaron Ray, Service Director of Policy in the Executive Director's Office at DNR. It's good to be with you again this morning, provide the update on behalf of Executive Director Dan Gibbs. I'll just start by noting that I'm really glad that State Land Board has staff at the DU meeting. EDO also sends folks. I went through that program. I think it's a terrific opportunity, and it is a great opportunity to connect with folks in other DNR divisions. So I'm glad that you're doing great. Speaking of staff, we are continuing to conduct interviews for 2 vacant positions in the Executive Director's Office, our Director of Legislative Affairs and our Human Resources Director, and we expect to make offers for both positions in the coming weeks. Turning to budget, the governor has signed the long bill for fiscal year 26-27, which starts July 1st. It was a very challenging budget year, as I think you all are aware. and the department's gratified that a number of our budget priorities were enacted, including operating requests for the state land board for additional staff for energy lease compliance and tribal consultation and engagement. And EDO budget and finance staff will be working with state land board staff on transitioning to the new fiscal year over the next few weeks. The legislative session adjourned yesterday. A number of DNR's legislative priorities have passed and are awaiting the governor's signature. That includes House Bill 26-1008, the Outdoor Opportunities Act, which adds capacity at CPW to manage increasing outdoor recreation demands. House Bill 26-1342, which is intended to reduce human-bear conflict by giving CPW additional enforcement tools to deter human activities that attract bears. And our annual water projects bill and species conservation trust fund bills both passed and will provide critical funding for water infrastructure and for species at risk. I'll also note that there were some other bills that were not proposed by DNR, but affect our divisions in which we were supportive of. House Bill 26-1132 directs state agencies to prioritize the use of native plants in revegetation projects. House Bill 26-1230 extended funding for Colorado's Conservation Easement Tax Credit Program. House Bill 26-1340 requires water right owners in the Arkansas Valley to revegetate formerly irrigated agricultural land if they are changing a water right from agricultural irrigation to some other beneficial use. And Senate Bill 26-141 creates a new voluntary $5 fee that Coloradans can opt into when they register a vehicle. And the revenue from that fee will support wildlife crossing infrastructure and other connectivity and wildlife conservation initiatives. We're grateful for the engagement of state land board staff throughout the legislative session and want to thank the legislators who worked tirelessly on these bills. And then I'm going to stop there. Questions about budget or legislative items?
So we needed permission to replant native plants or to reclaim with native plants?
What the bill does is it directs state agencies to prioritize that.
Okay.
It's certainly something that state agencies could have been doing, but
Yeah.
I think the advocates who proposed the bill thought that there could be more.
Okay, so it's
that agencies could
prioritized,
do.
it's not permission. Okay, got it.
Great, thank you.
Moving to federal updates, CPW is evaluating a request for information from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about Colorado's gray wolf 10J rule, or the rule that allows for an experimental population of wolves in Colorado. Responses to that RFI are due in June. CPW has worked in partnership with the Fish and Wildlife Service and Colorado's producer community throughout wolf reintroduction, and we look forward to continuing that, but we do intend to comment on that RFI. The Bureau of Land Management is accepting comments on their upcoming June oil and gas lease sale until May 17th, and I expect the department will also comment on that lease sale. That would affect 174 parcels covering about 160,000 acres across Colorado. In March, the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced a restructuring of the U.S. Forest Service that includes moving the headquarters from D.C. to Salt Lake City, replacing the 9 regional offices with 15 state offices, and reorganizing the research function of U.S. Forest Service into a program that will be headquartered in Fort Collins. The USDA has communicated that they do not intend any interruption or change to field-based operational firefighting over the summer based on this reorganization. And additional information about that reorganization can be found on USDA's website if you're interested. Moving to water, the Colorado Drought Task Force met for the 3rd time this spring on May 7th. State climatologist Russ Schumacher provided an update on drought and water supply conditions. And as of early May, conditions had worsened on the eastern plains, gotten a little bit better on the western slope. As of that meeting, about 10 days ago, 96% of the state was in moderate drought or worse, and 58% of the state was in extreme drought. I'll note that the precipitation we got last week has helped, but according to the data we have so far, certainly not alleviated drought conditions. As part of the state's drought response plan, the task force is forming work groups focused on municipal impacts, agricultural impacts, wildfire risk, and providing resources to communities. And so that work will continue, and the task force will meet again on June 1st. On the energy front, the Colorado Senate confirmed the first cohort of the state's Geologic Storage Stewardship Enterprise Board. That's a new enterprise that collects a fee on carbon sequestration projects and uses that to fund long-term monitoring of those projects. And that newly confirmed board is responsible for that program. Also, on carbon sequestration, EPA has proposed to approve the state's primacy application to regulate carbon sequestration wells. That approval has been out for public comment. That public comment period has closed, and we expect a final determination later this summer. So we're optimistic that the state will become the regulator of carbon sequestration wells. In the forestry space, the Ponderosa Mountain Pine Beetle Task Force met last week in Fort Collins. They are required to publish a detailed work plan by June 30th. They've identified some immediate priorities, including communicating to the public about the outbreak, and are working on longer-term recommendations. I'll also note that there are 2 projects funded by the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Program, or COSWAP, on state land board land this summer, one in Larimer County at Carter Lake and one in El Paso County at Black Forest. So we continue to appreciate the partnership with the state land board through COSWAP. And finally, at the May CPW Commission meeting, CPW staff delivered the division's annual wolf report. In that report, CPW identified a minimum population count of 32 gray wolves statewide. Staff also provided a summary of the conflict minimization measures that CPW is delivering. Also at that meeting, the commission adopted that division's final strategic plan. I know you've been thinking about your own strategic plan. CPW just adopted their updated strategic plan at the meeting last week. And that concludes my prepared remarks. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that. Any questions, commissioners?
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Always
Thank
love
you.
to see you.
Likewise.
Right, now, the first item of business that we need to hear about and decide on is request for review. And welcome field staff Goldberg Stricker.
Good morning, commissioners. Let's get my presentation up. Thank you. Today, my name is Wilbur Strickert. I'm Northeast District Manager, and today I'm here to visit with you about a request for review for ag lease number 118096. So today, a little summary of the staff decision. I'll give you a little bit of background, give you kind of our bid evaluation and our scoring summary and how that works. And then we'll go over what our recommendation was. And then today we have the parties that were involved in this competitive bid. And the first ones I have down as Mr. Tim Ortner. And so this is Tim and this is Mary Ann. They're here. And then we have from Lynn's Farms, Russ Hyder back here. And so when we get to those points, we'll have them come on. So this property is located in Yuma County, and it's kind of right here in this red spot. We got Nebraska right here, and it's kind of the closest town is, you can either say it's Ray or Holyoke. I'm not sure which one's the closest, but it's kind of in between those. And we got the site map here is a little zoomed in, a little closer view. And I want to point out that this property is right here. It's 320 acres. There's 2 pivots on it. And then in the corners of these is where the grazing acres come in for this particular one. This is the subject lease that we're talking about. The property directly right here is what the Lynn's Farms owns, and I think that's probably why they were intrigued and interested in this lease, because it's right next door. And the Ortners can correct this if I'm wrong in this, but the Ortners live to the north of this, approximately 15 miles is where their property is at. So this particular lease was advertised to the public in the second quarter of the expiring lease report, which is required by statute. We received a bid by the 180-day deadline from Lynn's Farms General Partnership for the $63,000, 687. And that was a standard rate bid. The district office, we notified the lessee of the competitive bid on the November 13th, like we're required to do. And they did not have their part of their 118 rights due to monetary default. They had 6 late payments that were significant, and then there was another 3 that weren't as significant in there. The Ortners had the opportunity, once they received that notice, to submit another bid for us, but they did not know what was bid against them at that time. That was the part they lost of their 118 rights. So when we move to the lease on what it tells us with, it says lessee must pay the board the rental due each and every year in advance on or before the lease anniversary date, as well as any accrued penalty interest during the term of the lease. So the lease payments that were in subject, as I mentioned, there were 9 of them. 6 of them were significant. We did not count the ones in this 6 that were less than 10 days. We had payments that were late throughout this in these 6 that went from being more than 10 days to as long as 7.5 months. 4 of those incurred interest on them, and the notices were sent on 3 of them. 1 of those 4 was received just late notices, or not late notices. They incurred the late penalty, and interest was occurred on just 1 of those. The other 3 did have default letters that went to them. And I listed the years here so you guys were familiar with which years those were that they were late on those. So when we move to statute, it tells us that the board shall not lease land currently leased for agriculture or grazing to anyone other than the present lessee for agriculture or grazing use, unless one of these 3 has not been met. So we have a lessee and board failed to agree on terms. That one didn't account for this one. Lessee does not wish to renew. They do wish to renew, so that one didn't count. It's the lessee failed to comply with any provisions of the lease. The non-payment is part of that lease where they failed to comply with that part. So we are open to be able to lease to anybody at that. So this caused us to move into our standard competitive bid evaluation. And we have 3 categories that we score off of. The first one is reasonable and consistent revenue, and that's 40% of their total score. And the revenue portion is, like it says, it's really about revenue. It has different questions, as you guys probably viewed in your packet, the score sheets. Right through those questions, it talks about the financial situation of that individual that is applying for the lease. The next part of that is the stewardship. It is also worth 40% of the total score, and that is just stewardship on the property. So for our lessee, we go look at that agriculture lease to see what they're doing on it, and we try to gauge their stewardship on that property. And if they're like, in this case, it was Lynn's Farms was not our lessee. We went to their private property. They took us to the one right next to it. They took us to some down the road. We looked at those pivots and irrigated, and then we looked at grazing property in the corners of the pivots and also grazing that they just had that wasn't in corners. And the last category that we look at is community stability. And so this portion talks about how they're involved in the community where they live at, how they are involved, like if they volunteer their time on any boards, if they serve on like a fire department, those types of things. Those are just a few examples. That's pretty broad. We ask them these questions and they let us know a response to them. Both of these folks do live in that area, so they are both local people. So after staff went through the interview process, went through those score sheets independently and scored them, What came up with our results was, Lynn's Farms was awarded the higher finance score. Because on the score sheet, there is a part that deducts if you have any violations to your lease, and those points are taken away due to the 3 late payments. So there was an automatically 3 points deducted off of the Ortner's score because of those late payments. The Ortners did submit the highest bid per acre, but Lynn's Farm still did come out ahead on our score sheets for the higher finance score. The Lynn's Farms was also awarded the higher stewardship score. Each one of us, as we viewed the property, each one of us felt that there was just a little bit of difference in stewardship. We looked at anywhere from cover on the crop ground to what was there on the grazing, whether the corners were overused, how much litter was left behind, how much they left behind on all those, what crops were planted there, what they used the crop for, because if they, like, for instance, if they have corn and they chop the corn, there's not quite as much cover. What do you do to cover that property so we don't have erosion? I know one of the lessees is a potato farmer. We looked at that. What do they do after they remove potatoes? How do they cover that to keep erosion? All that was looked at in the stewardship score. Staff felt after we independently scored them that Lynn's Farms did come out with the higher stewardship score. The next part was Lynn's Farms was awarded the higher score for the regardability of the local community. They do live directly next to this lease. I mean, they are down the road within a few miles. Their headquarters is down the road the other direction. They're very close in the area. They are very involved in the community. We felt the Ortners do live there. They're a little farther away, and they are also involved in the community as well. That was kind of a very tough one to break apart because they are both local people. But in the end, we did score Lynn's Farms a little higher on that category as well. And so in total, all 3 staff members awarded Lynn's Farms with the highest total score when they were all added together. So staff is here today for the recommendation that you guys at this board meeting uphold the staff decision and award this lease to Lynn's Farms. And I have if the Ortners, Ben and Marianne, if you guys would like to come forward, and the board would like to hear your guys' comments about this. Raising another chair.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. This one, okay, Mary?
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Morning.
Thank you for having us.
My name's Jeff Kerr, I'm an attorney with Richards Carrington LLC. We've got an office here in Denver. We've got offices out on the Eastern Plains in Burlington and Holyoke. I live out there, grew up out there, often deal with state land board issues all the way down to Lamar up to Julesburg. So very familiar with the board and have been in front of you before. My clients are Tim and Marianne Ortner, good friends of mine. And they asked me to take a look at this process. And we really shouldn't, this item shouldn't be on your agenda. The competitive bid by Lynn's was late under your policy. It was not submitted within the 180 days. The policy that the board has is 180 days. If that deadline falls on a holiday or a weekend, it's the previous workday. You can see in your packet that Lynn's Farms submitted their competitive bid on November 3rd. The lease expired May 1st. 180 days would have been Sunday, November 2nd. So under your policy and your application materials for competitive bid, the correct deadline was Friday, October 31st. So I'm asking the board to throw out Lynn's Farms competitive bid and then default to Ortner's bid at the standard rate. There is a lot more that I would like to address and say about the evaluations, but I really think it should stop there because there is no competitive bid under your policies. I will mention that there's numerous misrepresentations and factual inaccuracies in the paperwork. Number one, the April board minutes for for this meeting before the Ortner submitted their request for review talks about them having the right to match, and they didn't do that. You heard Mr. Stricker just let the board know that they didn't have that right, and they didn't have that right. It was taken from them for the late payments. The late payments, we heard him say there was 9, and I think I heard him say there was 3. There were late payments. As you all know, agriculture is very tough right now. I manage about 250,000 acres for the Farm Service Agency for farmers in that area. The margins are nil. So it's a tough environment, and the rates are the rates for the state land board are higher than what I'm seeing out there right now. So they did have some late payments. In the application materials, it talks about the Ortners having financial assurance. They did, that Mr. Stricker was not able to verify the financial assurance. That's because he didn't try. There was a letter submitted in the evaluation process from a private lender that has lended to the Ortners in the past. Unfortunately, that letter didn't contain any contact information. It was very professional, but it didn't have an email or a phone number. But nobody reached out to the Ortners to get a phone number or email for the gentleman that did private lending. He's a good friend of mine, and he is going to lend money to the Ortners. The evaluation material talks about successors and doesn't acknowledge that their son is on the lease and would be a successor to the lease. I'm very frustrated with the process because the Lynn's bid should have been rejected on Monday, November 3rd. The Ortners don't have the ability to know when Lynn submitted that competitive bid until the process is way over, right? Until it's awarded by staff to Lynn's and they make a query request and can see that information. A simple calendar date from staff should have been done and it should have been redacted that day. A lot of time, money, and mental gymnastics has went into this matter since November 3rd. This is these people's livelihoods. So that's hard to swallow, to be honest with you. When it's something so simple in a policy. It either roaches on competence or is intentionally happening. And I will tell you that in Northeast Colorado, this feels intentional. People tell me that there's preferential treatment, that not everyone's on the same level playing field. And there's no way to address that but coming here. So the Ortners and myself both appreciate this opportunity to speak to you. I'm asking you again to reject Lynn's Farms competitive bid, which would set this back to Ortner was the only bid. They submitted at standard rate and accept that. If Tim and Mary Ann would like to say something, I'd like to give them that opportunity.
I guess on the financial side of it, the reason why we were late is we switched banks in like 2017. And they set up our renewal process due June 1st. We did not have the working capital to make our payments always on time. But I would disagree that we had 6 late payments according to the sheet that we've pulled off of your website. We do show 3. And I don't think that we were ever 7 months late on making our full payment. I don't know how to verify that without going back and looking at checks and stuff. But according to the sheet that we pulled off the website, the latest one that shows that we had a payment was last year in 2015 or 2025. And that was, about 6 weeks late. Because then that's again when we switched banks again, or lending opportunities. Went with Five Queens Capital.
And that won't happen again.
And so, it's one of those things like Jeff said that, agriculture is tough, financially. And if you don't have the working capital to make all your payments ahead of time, until you got your loan fully secured, then it's really tough to do. When we talked to Elisa at this Sterling office, she never indicated to us that that was going to be a problem. I know there was one year that we made partial payment because that's the money we had. And then once we got the loan finalized, then we went ahead and made the full payment. As far as the stewardship goes, and Wilbur indicated about the overgrazing of the corners. When we had our interview, he made the comment to us, when you run cattle on after feed like rye or Trilly, it's tough not to overgraze your corners. So he understands that, but yet in the process of being evaluated, we were penalized because of that. You know, the only time that we have cattle on the corners is when we graze the after feed. Before we got the lease about 20 years ago, it was farm ground that the person ahead of us put back into grass, and it never got really established very well. In our yearly reviews, we never have been questioned about our stewardship, you know, and so it was a surprise to us to see that, you know, we had any issues.
I have something. Cooper Carlson from the Northeast office sent us a letter reviewing some of our other state lease ground. And that letter, it was submitted that our stewardship was very good, and he appreciated what we did for that ground. That ground is in Phillips County.
And I guess if you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Commissioners, only clarifying questions at this point, or any of the parties, if you have one.
Can we ask council and Wilbur questions?
I would invite Wilbur to come back up, and I think you're going to introduce another party, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so let's hold that.
Okay.
And any other questions for the parties in front of you? All right, thank you for making.
My question is, the council has asserted that the time frame was calculated in a way that was not accurate.
I think that's what we will maybe have a question for Wilbur.
Yeah, and we're just asking for a fair shake, and I don't think this is gray. I think it's black and white under your own policies. These were the only bids that should be presented to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next individual we would have is from Lynn's Farms, and that's.
Yeah, and Mr. Stricker, actually, I think we'll hold on.
Okay.
Bringing up another party, because I think that there's a question for you.
Okay.
From the commission.
Oh, so a couple of questions.
Okay.
What about the dates? Is that accurate? What,
I believe I calculated the dates correctly. That's what I believe. I do not try to cheat anybody on any date or anything. I've rejected bids because they walk in the office late, say, I'm sorry, but you are too late. I believe I calculated the dates correctly. I will tell you the date that I am aware that I did calculate incorrectly. And that is the 6 month, or not 6 month period, the 100, get the date, it's the number of days that they have to review their bid. I can't think what the number of those days are, Rachel.
Or you talk.
The 10-day notification, and then they have 90 days to complete their application. I calculated that date wrong. I actually calculated and gave them too many days. I calculated that one completely wrong. So then it put us at a little bit of a time crunch. We didn't go back on the date we said. We just, I said it, that's the date it goes.
the Lentz farm had too many days, or
The Ortners had too many days on our 90-day negotiation.
okay.
So
So
I did calculate that date wrong. I completely admit that one.
I assume for our decision, it's pretty important that we know
Yeah, exactly.
whether the dates were correct or not. I mean, isn't that a starting point?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that is a.
And then the other question I had is, can you roughly summarize, I read it, but I've sort of forgotten, penalties for late fees in terms of the lessee, in terms of what they can and can't apply for, and where they can no longer see the competitive bid. I gather that. How many late fees or late payments do you have to incur before that happens?
So the staff has taken it upon itself that we kind of have the guidelines set forward for us that after you receive 3 of those late payments, and those have notices sent out, that's when you lose your part of your 118, right? And then that's when you can no longer see your bid. You get notified of the bid, but you can't see the dollar amount that was bid again.
So you're going back into the general bidding process.
Yes, you go back into the general where you're held at the same as everybody else. You don't get the right to match that bid, so you don't know what it is.
And is it a fixed date for the late payments, or is there a, I don't know, cushion or whatever? I mean, is it, if you don't pay by the date it's due, or is there like a 10-day, whatever?
It's
Yeah, grace period, thank you.
it is the anniversary date of the lease.
Okay,
The only time that date would change is if there was an error in our system and their bill was not able to, did not get sent out to them, and then finance would kick it back for whatever date. I think they kick it back. They try to make sure they have 30 days, I believe it is, isn't it, Rachel?
Yes, and hello, commissioners. Good morning. For the record, my name is Rachel Turner. I'm the field operations team lead, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of additional context to hopefully help with your decision making. As far as the date question, I have spoken with our district assistant who receives those, and she's verified that it was received before the deadline. Our Sterling office and our other district offices have closed doors Thursdays and Fridays, and so when Mr. Lenz the representative from Mr. Lenz Farms comes up and speaks, I think that they'd be able to probably answer what day it was actually dropped off. That date received was when it was opened in the office. We also have some clarifying pieces within our documents within the past 5 years that I believe Ed and his team have helped with related to just those dates. If it's that deadline is on a weekend, we receive it on the first business day rather than the previous business day, like the next business day. And that's something that has been changed in our procedure within the last 5 years or so. I don't have the exact date off the top of my head, but I can dig that up if needed. So that is a clarifying piece on that. As far as the late payments, yes, if they are even 1 day late, it is considered a late payment. However, as the Ortners had 9 late payments, only 6 of those had actual formal notices sent out, and those are when the penalties.
3.
So we've mentioned 6 within the cover sheets and within our documents for the presentation today. And our finance team does have penalties and interest that accrues for each late day. And so they will calculate what those late payments are. And am I missing any of the other?
is there a reason there's discrepancy between 9, 6, and 3? Late, I've heard 3 numbers, 9, 6, and 3.
So there are 9 late payments,
Okay.
and 6 of those were a significant
Okay.
amount. Yes, and so we have what's called our delinquent process, and then we have a demand for payment.
I see.
So anything that fits within 30 days of late payment is a delinquent note.
I see.
Anything that's over that 30 days late is a demand for payment.
Got it.
One demand for payment means you've immediately lost certain preferential rights afforded under 118. It takes 3 delinquent notices to get a loss of 118 rights. So it's not necessarily a grace
Got it.
payment on late payments, but we do consider a delinquency a little less aggressive.
Right.
than demand for payment.
Okay.
So the delinquency ones that were sent out was a 60-day late one, a 227-day late one, and a 59-day late one.
And Rachel, could you confirm again where these policies of the, if the date of the lease renewal falls on a holiday or a Saturday or Sunday? I'm hearing 2 different things. Where is it written that it's due either the convention of the day after or the convention of the business days before?
Yes, so the 180 days is dictated in statute. I would refer to our Attorney General's office to kind of discuss those pieces. Whether or not it's accepted within the previous or the next business day is in lease language, and that's within the lease document itself.
So
Rachel, excuse me,
The lease-
can you repeat that last sentence? I didn't hear it properly.
Whether or not it's accepted on the previous calendar, like if the deadline would be the previous calendar business day, if the deadline would be the previous business day, if it was received on a weekend or a holiday versus whether it would be received as valid on the next business day. This has been lease language and internal processing procedure. And this has been heard by previous boards as well in the past.
So our leases provide for it to be received the day after a closure business, a
Our
holiday or
recent lease
weekend.
template does, yes.
So if it's due Friday, it's received Saturday, it's considered received on Friday.
Yes, and I can't verify whether or not it was received over the weekend or if it was received previous. Like I said, our offices are closed to public Thursdays and Fridays, and so they could have easily dropped it in one of our drop boxes and then called our district assistants and just
To
verify.
say they did that.
Commissioners, we have a drop dead or hard stop at noon or at 11. So let's maybe introduce the next party. And we'll have a chance to.
Do we need a little bit more definition from council about this date dispute?
We're trying to line up the written examples to provide that.
So I think we'll hold
Yeah.
that, Commissioner, and then we'll have a commissioner discussion following the next party.
So the next party would be Lynn's Farms, and I believe the representative is Russ Hire.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time today. Yes, as stated for the record, Russell Hire, general partner of Lynn's Farms. We are a third generation owned, multi-generation, obviously, highly diversified farming, ranching, and cattle feeding operation located in Northeast Yuma County. There are 6 current active partners, and we are all either brother-in-laws or cousins. We're all related somehow. Which comes with its blessings and challenges. Between those 6 partners, we're raising 23 children in our operation, and we are all highly involved in our community. 5 of the partners are on the fire department locally that's located about 7 miles from this lease and covers this lease is in its coverage area. We're on the school board. We have a partner who's on the school board in Ray. We take our resources and local community very seriously. Water, as you're aware, in the state of Colorado is our most valuable resource, and the Republican River Basin is no different. So we do our best and place a lot of value on managing that resource. Our crops are diversified. Our operations are vertically integrated, which allows us to mitigate risk and mitigate financial strain in hard times, as they've previously been mentioned. I guess I'd like to lend a little clarity to the submission of the dates. That's kind of been the main topic of conversation here. We submitted our bid electronically on Monday, November 3rd. And the reason it was submitted that day is Wilbur had instructed me when I had asked him the previous week when it was due, that it was due on Monday, November 3rd. So it was not dropped off in a box. It was electronically submitted. It's not an excuse. We were in the middle of harvest and I ran it down to the deadline, but that was the deadline that was given to me by staff. So I guess I'll clarify the submission date. Yes, everyone was in harvest. You're right. I would like to say that during this entire term of the previous lease, agriculture was not entirely tough. That, you know, the last few years have been very, very hard, and the coming few years will be as well. But there were times that were profitable in the last 10 years. Our diversity helps us to mitigate that financial strain. For us, livestock has been extremely profitable the last 2 years, and we're thankful for that. Part of managing a business is having those resources lined up and in place to meet demands. So I guess I would like to ask the board if you have any questions for me. And thank you for your time. Thank you for this process. We appreciate the opportunity for staff to evaluate potential new tenants and look forward to hopefully having a mutually beneficial relationship with all of you.
Thank you. Commissioners, clarifying questions for Lynn's Farms? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Wilbur. So it would seem, just as, again, a matter of clarity, that in the lease that we're discussing, what does that's a physical document. What does the language say about the day, the convention for the day that an offer is submitted?
If it falls on that weekend, it should be the following day. That's the process that we have
That's a process. I'm asking a question about the lease language.
And I have our current lease language here. And I've been chatting with our attorney on this side, but if any date set forth in the lease is to occur on a holiday or other non-business day, or if any period of time set forth in the lease expires on a holiday or non-business day, then such date shall be the next business day thereafter. So in our current lease language, it says that. if
And
it's
is
received
the
on
Ortner
Wednesday-
lease a current lease?
The current lease language. I'm trying to dig up the Ortner lease on my phone.
I think that unfortunately, that is a very
That is
important
important.
detail.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I can't speak for the other commissioners right now, but that is a detail that I think prevents us from having much more discussion until we know the answer.
Yeah, I think we have to know exactly what it says and exactly the
In this
electronic
case,
submission and whether we're, what the bounds are. So,
Counselor,
This is Ed Hamrick, Assistant Attorney General. I agree, and I suggest in order to fully consider the submission information that the Ortners have raised, that the board table this while we track down the Ortners lease and the communication guidelines for competitive bids and clarify the timing and allow the board to make an appropriately advised decision on the matter.
I think that's a good suggestion. Commissioners, would someone like to make a motion to table this until further information is available?
I'll make a motion to table this.
Thank you,
Till we-
Commissioner.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pribble. Commissioner Pribble, have you vote? Commissioner
Oh,
Pribble?
aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon? Aye. Chair votes yes, motion carries 5-0. So thank you. We'll wait for the information.
We'll go figure it out.
Yes.
Just for their information, I mean, they've all traveled a long ways. Will this be then considered our next meeting?
No, I'm imagining that we're tabling it just for a matter of minutes or some period here today.
That's what I'm anticipating.
Yeah.
Well,
So let's operate under that assumption and we'll check back in if that isn't the correct assumption. Okay?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks. All right, then, importantly, we would like to invite GPS up to introduce our action item on the strategic plan. Welcome.
Thank you.
I think we're ready to roll.
I'm amused by the fact that your corporate picture is fog.
It's just what we wish for.
And
Yes, sir.
so I
Very good
I
thought.
presume that that's the opening slide, and at the end of the presentation, we
It's just
have
clear.
the lifting of the
Yeah.
fog and sunshine.
That's the implication. Thank you.
All right. Looking forward, would you like to start? Or
Please,
are you introducing it? It seems like we're ready for you all.
we're ready to go if you are.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the time here. We are delighted to present you a essentially final draft of the core elements of the State Land Board's strategic plan for the next period. We have a number of elements here to share. We'll walk through the basic presentation of that, provide a little bit of context if you like, and then we look for any comments or questions that you have.
For the record, remind us of who you are.
Oh, sorry, Brian Poole, partner with Government Performance Solutions.
And I'm Erin Ulrich, also a partner with Government Performance Solutions.
I'm gonna have to click. Can I give it to you?
All right, so we're looking at the 2026 to 2030 draft strategy map. We've developed this in articulation for a one-page view, a simple strategy on a page. The idea here is that you're able to visualize the top level sort of reasons for being, your purpose statements, if you like, your vision, mission, your tagline, and your foundational principle in blue. And then we articulate the three main areas of focus, your goals over the next 5 years, including any of the related objectives. And in all cases, we have 5 supporting objectives for each of the 3 goals. I'll just highlight some of these big areas here to get us going, but we often lead with the vision. This is your aspirational statement of why people, why you exist and why people should join you in your endeavors. Here we have thriving and resilient state trust lands fund the needs of Colorado's current and future public school students. We move to the mission statement, which is more concrete, defines why you are here and what you are committed to doing. We protect and enhance Colorado state trust lands with an intentional ambition and ingenuity to perpetually generate reasonable and consistent revenue for public schools. This year, we've added a tagline to simplify those things, to make it very easy for people to connect the 3 main areas that we're focused on. And those are resilient lands, enduring revenue, and better schools for Colorado. We also include a reworking of your foundational principle we thoughtfully steward trust assets to deliver intergenerational benefits. And we emphasize the word steward and have a definition for that on the next page. So those 4 areas are really important to establish the why you are here. What is your purpose as an organization? What are you committing to all of your stakeholders to do and accomplish? And how you will do that, how you will operate together in terms of your foundational principle. So then we think about the what. What are we committing to do? We have the 3 main goals here. We'll start with enduring revenue on the left. Then we have resilient land, and then connecting people on the right. As to enduring revenue, we describe this in more detail as the goal is to distribute dependable and growing cash flows for your current and future beneficiaries. There's 5 main objectives here. Independently and collectively, these articulate specific, measurable, and achievable targets for over the next 5 years. So we have optimized the performance of the trust assets, diversify revenue streams across the trust, align your asset management strategies to ensure increasing cash flows, support strategies that increase the long-term earning power of the trust, and expand partnerships and markets that enhance trust revenue. For goal 2, resilient land, we want to expand on this by stating your goal is to advance the economic productivity of the trust lands through sound stewardship, including protecting and enhancing the beauty, natural values, open space, and wildlife habitat for this and future generations. We break this into 5 specific objectives. First, invest in climate resilience, ecosystem health, and biodiversity. Then strengthen management standards across state trust lands. Align incentives and partnerships to promote sustainable land management. Expand the use of data, science, innovation, and experience to guide land management decisions. And demonstrate improvements in land health and productivity. Third goal, connecting people. Here we further define this as ensure long-term organizational excellence by empowering staff and building trust among diverse networks. We break this into 5 main objectives. First, invest in the people, systems, and tools needed to manage the trust assets effectively. Foster a culture of collaboration, innovation, and continuous improvement. Ensure clear, transparent, and consistent governance and decision-making. Build trust, alignment, and coordination across our networks. And increase understanding of the trust's value and impact across Colorado.
And you're going to go to the mnemonic next, right? And then after that, I think that it would be really good to maybe illuminate kind of how this not how it rolls out, but where the action piece of all this
Sure.
hangs.
Sure, and happy to answer questions you have about how we arrived at this point, our
Right.
process and so on. But we wanted to lead with the product today.
I'm glad.
All right, we've covered each of these.
So, yeah.
So I mentioned the foundational principle. We've retooled this year from before. We have one major foundational principle. We thoughtfully steward trust assets to deliver intergenerational benefits. And there have been questions and some thinking of, can we provide more thought behind what steward means to us? Many define that in their own way, and we struggled with that sometimes through some of the work that we've done. So we start here with a mnemonic: steward. To start with your beneficiaries, team with your partners, engage with staff, welcome evolution, achieve impact, respect the land, and ultimately deliver revenue.
And I'd like to insert here and highlight the W, the welcome evolution. That sort of could run right by you, but in fact, some of the perceptions of the word steward means kind of restricting growth or just maintaining something in place. And I think it's really important that as we implement this plan and as we communicate our intent, that we focus on the evolution and read in innovation and creative thinking that we will bring to implementing this. It is not about staying in place.
Well said. All right, we want to break each of these down in a little bit more specificity, provide some detailed objectives, if you like, in each of these areas. So as we highlighted, number one, distribute dependable and growing cash flows for current beneficiaries. Under the first strategic objective here around optimizing performance of the trust assets, we outline here a number of specific areas that are important to help guide us over the next 5 years.
And Brian, what I might do, since we've sat with this quite a bit, I might really say to the audience listening that right now, maybe what we'll do is recognize sort of the structure of this plan, that we have strategic objectives, and then within that, we're going to be, coming up with these action items and reviewing those, kind of maybe talking more about the process and our goal for enduring revenue, sort of why, if you can.
Sure. So to take a step up from all the details here, our concern has been how do we stay faithful to your constitutional requirements, the language that articulates the purpose for you all, and provide some opportunity to actually improve that performance over time. There have been some challenges in terms of operating and optimizing some areas. There's been some concerns around specialization in oil and gas, or an over-reliance in oil and gas and mineral assets. So when we look at this around optimization of the trust assets, you see a broadening here and an emphasis on diversification and finding opportunities to expand and innovate where possible to move the trust forward in a more sustainable way, given all of the details that we are aware of. So if we think about number two, diversifying the revenue streams, we're really thinking about that, right? Where are the additional areas to generate revenue, and articulate the need to do so, to explore those, to press forward and actively diversify the revenue streams. Number three, broadly, we're thinking about there are areas and there have been concerns around do we have a model that actually can provide some scenario planning and some ability to develop alternate and more optimization around the revenue flows, but that we actually look into some variations and scenarios that address acquiring land, developing those resources, conserving areas, depleting resources, particularly fossil fuels, and recognizing that as a diminishment of the value in that asset, and then ultimately disposing of those. So this model and the asset management strategies around it are new and really going to give you a number of tools to manage forward. More broadly around number 4, the strategies around the long-term earning power of the trust. There have been a lot of conversations around the permanent fund, and is it really set up and optimized a way to provide the maximum risk-adjusted return, if you like, and are there ways to enhance its ability to actually generate more revenue? So there's an important area there to evaluate. And then more broadly on 5, we're thinking about there are a number of areas of expertise we heard in our outreach efforts from both state partners and private sector who have offered and have ideas on how to actually improve revenue generation and explore innovative opportunities on some of the assets and some of the lands. So to engage those folks and work through there, those might be around renewable energy or water or other areas that you have not explored in the past and haven't really leveraged some of the partnerships and interests that people have to engage with you.
And once again, I want to jump in here in terms of, in this plan, a lot of time, or most of the time, you want to have a strategic plan and you want to be not only clear about your objectives, but also about your ability to deliver on it. This is one of the primary areas of our 3 goals where the objectives we have, some of which the methods of achieving those objectives are outside of our span of control. That doesn't stop us for setting a path and a strategy and invoking others to achieve those objectives. So not being within our span of control is a risk, but it is not a reason to stop pursuing the things that we know are so important as commissioners in terms of ensuring that the trust can deliver the cash flows over time that are commensurate with the needs of the future generations. And so distributing dependable and growing cash flows requires more than we can control, but we are going to pursue and persist to achieve that. Thank you.
Looking at number 2, resilient land. Here we had reworded the supporting language here as we touched on the beginning. The 5 main areas to think about here in terms of investing in climate resilience and ecosystem health and biodiversity. We've elevated this in the sequence here and want to address this and be more assertive around this goal. We've listened to your feedback around that. To strengthen the management across trust lands and thinking about how to protect the natural values and the long-term economic productivity of the lands, concerns you've shared with us. And aligning incentives and partnerships to promote more sustainable land development, thinking about land use practices and resources here that actually improve the land health and its value, and in particular supporting innovations in sustainable agriculture on the lands. In the 4th area, we're thinking about data, science, innovation, and actual practical experience as all sources of information to help guide decision making, and wanting to leverage research, some of the partners we have across the state, monitoring and new technologies, and diverse knowledge to improve land management for long-term planning. And
to your point too, like I would highlight, number 1 is number 1 for good reasons, and through all of our conversations and through the input that we've received from others. The starting word on that is invest. That's not just time, that's also money. That's reprioritizing the I&D funds that we have. So that's very much of an action that we'll be pursuing. And then number 5, this speaks to our role as an organization of leading and demonstrating to others why resilient land management, it's just sustainable land management and climate-oriented agricultural practices can work, and demonstrating with evidence how they do work. Because without that leadership, we lose a lot of momentum with all the ancillary private lands and other public lands. So to me, those are 2 very important objectives that we'll be pursuing. Any other thoughts?
Sums it up.
Next.
Wonderful. Goal 3, connecting people. A lot of conversations in our work around how do we incorporate staff and the people that staff directly interacts with or could and other networks that may be needed to be brought in to achieve the strategy overall. So a lot of thinking here about building out staff, empowering staff, and actually working on building trust among your networks in the state, including new networks. So we talked about strengthening staffing, technology, and operational capacity. There are more activities. There is a lot of work. Staff does feel they're full. Their plate is full, and finding ways to actually support them either through new technologies and process improvements is an important area. And similarly here, a culture of collaboration and innovation, using staff and then allowing them to suggest and implement ideas and solving problems to improve your operations on a day-to-day basis. And in the third area, we think about clear and transparent governance and decision making. We heard some criticism of past practice that it was not quite as clear why certain decisions were made, either by staff or the board over time. And we're investing here to provide over time additional clarity around why decisions are being made. How does the decision support the strategic plan in the future? For example, what are some of the connective points as we move forward? There's an ask to provide that and be better communicators to both internally and externally around decisions that are made. And this is a commitment to follow through on that. Number 4, thinking about trust and alignment across the networks. We had so many interviews and focus groups. We spoke with over 100 people, internal and external, as we developed this plan with you all. And I would say if there was one common theme in terms of particularly your external stakeholders, it was talk to us on a more regular basis. Listen to what we have to say as you think about your annual plans, for example. Tell us what you've been doing. Tell us why those decisions have been made, and listen as we move forward into those future years. So this 4 is a commitment to live up to that, and in ways that you may structure individually or more collectively, but building those relationships with your partners, for example, other state agencies or local and municipal governments and other advocacy groups and nonprofits who have an interest in some of the lands, but don't get to make the decisions around those things. And so your commitment here is to reach out to all of those various partners and potential partners and be more transparent about that. And then finally, number 5, increasing understanding of the trust value and impact across Colorado. We've adjusted this slightly over the last couple of days, but certainly the thinking here has been, as people look sometimes at the State Land Board, they see one aspect of that or one facet of how they may have interacted with you or might want to interact with you. But they often don't see all of the facets, all of the various stakeholders that you do interact with. And they may be unfamiliar with some of the constraints and constitutional requirements that you have to act in a fiduciary way to your beneficiaries, to the schools particularly. So that can help this idea of increasing the understanding of the value that you provide and the trust itself provides across the state. Investing in that and showing how having others help you and communicate that is really important for your long-term viability. So we've included that here as part of the strategic plan.
And that is, we have discovered that our current director has really enhanced that, and the feedback during the process highlighted that we can get so much more done, so much more effectively if we're working actively and communicating and listening actively to all the folks that want to be involved or are involved.
We have one more slide for y'all. Just next steps. We're hoping you'll take final action on the elements of these plans. The board does have thoughts, and the staff has thoughts on how to disseminate this and use it to guide your priorities over the next few years. And importantly, there'll be a detailed year 1 implementation plan coming up as part of the annual business planning process. We've already provided some thoughts around that, and think that of all these priorities, there's a sequence that's important to tackle in some of these areas, and making sure that the foundational principles of the strategy are addressed first, and that commitments are made, and that on a recurring basis through the annual business planning process. There's opportunities to learn and provide feedback to you all, and stay faithful to this. While if you learn new information and progress is not as expected, perhaps resources or other decisions can be made to make adjustments to this. But we'd like to see those adjustments made together in concert with some of the other commitments that are made.
And as we've discussed, we have an implementation plan and a cadence for review, and in every way, this is a dynamic or guiding document that will result in business plans and outcomes that we identify. And any final words from you all about this process with this organization based on all your history and experience with other organizations? Any last words of?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an honor to be part of this. I've worked off and on with you all over the last 10 years and seen just an enormous amount of maturity and growth and commitment to the very mission you have. I think you have a unique challenge in this. Many people would have designs and ideas on how you operate. So the expansive nature of the outreach and the stakeholder engagement that we went through, as I mentioned, speaking with over 100 individuals, including staff and many external stakeholders, provided us with, and then to you, to be the voice for that. And you've been responsive to that in here. And we believe this is really reflective of both what is necessary and what has been asked. Certainly there are some compromises that needed to be made, and we think they're here. Erin, I defer to you.
I agree with all of that. I mean, I think a lot of times we see plans move forward in a boardroom with a small handful of folks. And it's been a really transparent process. I think we're really, to Brian's point, really reflecting from what the staff shared, what partners shared. And yes, while there's some compromises in the plan, I think overall, hopefully all the partners and staff who provided input into this plan really see themselves. That was the goal. And I think feels like that's where we landed. So it's exciting.
That's great. We've appreciated your services. I mean, it's been, from my perspective, and I think I speak kind of the other commissioners, this has been the most effective and enjoyable strategic planning process. And I think a lot of that is due to your skillful facilitation and helping us realistically reach the objectives of putting this large thing together. So, thank you. And I know I reversed the order in this, but I was hoping now that Director Rosemarino and Assistant Director Massey might share a little bit of the insights of how this is going to be implemented with the organization over the next year.
Sure.
You want to start?
We'll start. Thank you. Director Rosemarino here. So we are already looking at building specific projects for each of the 5 objectives under each of the 3 business goals. So we talked yesterday about really having a structure that is living, that we are utilizing, and we're already undertaking that work. I think, as Deputy Director Massey pointed out yesterday, we already have really good reporting structures in place to come back to the board with our annual business goal process, which will kick off shortly, and our annual business plan readouts in the fall. So we will sort of combine the old with the new, and you will be hearing much more from us. I think another really key piece coming out of this process is the strategic planning committee will remain intact. And we will meet at least every 6 months to ensure, in GPS's words, that we're remaining true to this process and revisiting and adapting. The board mentioned adaptive management, and that really should pervade this entire plan and its implementation. And so we have already envisioned a structure to do that. And we will at least annually report out to the public through our annual business plan, the implementation of this plan. So lots of different ways, I think, to continue to strengthen our transparency with all of you and with all of the folks that participated in this. And while I have the floor, I just want to echo the praise for GPS. If you ever want a testimonial, please come knocking. But also our entire staff engaged at multiple points throughout this process, which was not a nice to have, it was a must have. Because our staff will be driving implementation of this day in and day out. And so the very foundation of the plan included robust staff engagement, and then with refinements of the plan included staff engagement. And we will continue as a staff to talk about what works well in this plan going forward. I also want to underscore the engagement of external partners. Deputy Director Massey told me the other day, the scale of outreach by the State Land Board is unprecedented. And we mean to make it precedented by continuing to do it. I think, again, it's not a nice to have, it's critical. We have industry partners, NGO partners, sister agencies, DNR, CDA. I think just a lot of different folks are beneficiaries that we want to keep talking to, make sure that those lines of communications are open and strengthened. And so, Deputy Director Massey, anything to add?
Very well said. And just to make that final connection, as these plans inform project development, informs annual business planning, those pieces also then inform individual performance planning. And we've got a great process around that, and line of reporting, lots of open communication up and down. And it's not even up and down. We like to say we're a pretty flat organization. Lots of collaboration, lots of cooperation across projects. It's a great culture, and some of this is, thanks to some of the underpinning skeleton of good frameworks like this. So happy to continue to move forward.
Thank you. I think now, before we engage in sort of the commissioner discussion and then ultimately a motion and a vote on the adoption, we'll check and see if anybody, there's no one in the room, I don't believe, but if there's anyone online who has comment on this item.
Folks listening along online, if you wanted to make a comment on this item in front of the board, please use the raise hand button. No hands are raised, Commissioner.
Okay. Great. Well, fellow commissioners, any questions, thoughts, observations?
I really like it. I think it's a lot of good direction. It's lean, so there's not a lot of fluffy words in there. It's stuff we can really do. I think it captures a lot of what we've talked about at various board meetings, and it sounds like all our constituent clients have contributed, the staff's contributed. So I think it's really good. I think those two words, intentional ambition, might mean the staff deserves a 20% increase in salaries right off the bat. But no, I really like it.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Madam Chair, I'd suggest that maybe just simply a 20% increase in staff levels.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Because the workload is increasing. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Carlos.
No, and I appreciate all the external outreach. I think we did receive public comment.
Oh, yeah, we did.
email.
I acknowledged
Yeah.
that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just in tribute to people who were really paying attention and really engaged. And I know something about strategic planning, and you all were great, just exceptional in how you went about this. So appreciative.
Concur with all that. And I'd say, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. Eager for implementation.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. May I have a motion then to approve the adoption of the strategic plan as captured in our packet?
Motion.
Second.
Commissioner Harvey and Commissioner Heath, thank you. Commissioner Pribble, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Plans adopted 5-0 unanimously.
Thank you.
And thanks for all of our hard work, especially the staff and consulting team.
Do you have a card? Business card on you, or email me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's old school.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's been a
I
joy.
wish we had a fake champagne bottle.
Yeah.
Right into you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Do we need to check in on the other matter or shall we proceed to grassland carbon? What? Okay. All right, we're proceeding to grassland carbon.
A little.
Oh, hey, look at you. Thank you.
Thanks again, team.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm Mindy Gotts-Sagan. I'm the Stewardship and Ecosystem Services Program Manager for the State Land Board. And I'm here today to present you with the revised lease terms for our grassland carbon payment for ecosystem services rider involving our first project with Chico Basin Ranch and our ag lessee Flying Diamond Ranch. I presented this to you a year ago in April of 2025, and we did our best to identify what the lease terms were moving forward. And as part of your board order, you also directed staff to work with our legal counsel and begin to develop these brand new lease contracts in terms of engaging with this voluntary carbon market. And in the last year, we've been doing that. It's taken longer than we thought, but we're coming back to you at this time because there's a few of those terms that have changed. And we felt it prudent to come back to you. Even though you delegated staff the ability to work within this context, we felt that some of these terms had changed substantially enough that we felt it wise to come back. So I'll be reviewing today. I'll go just kind of reintroduce you to the property again, just really quickly where this is, and then look at those terms and then tell you which ones stay the same and which ones. So as you know, the Chico Basin Ranch is located on the border of Pueblo and El Paso counties. It's part of this large land aggregation. It's leased by Flying Diamond Ranch. That lease is about a year and a half old at this point. The ranch itself is our largest single ranch operation at almost 87,000 acres. This pink outline shows the location of the Chico Basin Ranch lease. And its proximity, obviously, to Colorado Springs and Pueblo. You visited the property last summer, and we were able to see the bird banding project there too. This is, before I leave the maps, I wanted just to kind of show this one last time. You may recall that 8 sections of the property were not included in the grassland carbon lease. These were under solar planning leases. In the year since, 3 of these sections, that planning lease expired and the company did not renew it. That's these 3 sections at the very bottom of the southern end of the property. Staff chose not to put them back into the grassland carbon program. These properties remain surrounded by other solar planning leases, supported by transmission lines, and we really think there's a strong leasing opportunity. So even though they're not currently leased for solar planning purposes, I just wanted to inform you that we're still not going to include them in the grassland carbon program. Any questions? Okay. So this slide shows the existing and new leases that are on the property. This information is in the board packet at the top of the cover sheet. I will say in the last year, there was one additional lease on this property that has pulled that didn't materialize at this point for geocarbon leasing for carbon capture and geothermal storage, or geological storage. But I wanted to also update you on what the terms are now for the grassland carbon lease with Flying Diamond Ranch. In the last year, I estimated revenue, and that cover sheet from last April is included in your board packet as well, and you can compare those values. But the amount of revenue that we're estimating now for the land board, partly under the revised lease terms, but also under a better understanding of what the value is of the grassland carbon credits. We're estimating that the revenue for the land board will be about $530,000 a year for the first 10-year period. All of our estimates are really just focused on the first 10 years. That's when the majority of the carbon, soil organic carbon, is expected to be sequestered. and the length of this payment for ecosystem services lease term. And again, this is our first grassland carbon lease rider that you approved last April under the agency's biological funding sequestration. So at a high level, the payment for ecosystem service rider highlights are the state land board share revenue will be 30% of the net revenue. Last year, this was 25%. The state land board has negotiated a higher 5% increase in that rate. And I'll talk a little bit about that later, but as part of at this time last year, we didn't have our ecosystem, our grassland carbon leasing policy. We do have that now. And as part of that, the board had expressed a commitment that for leases that come into the grassland carbon program, we would keep the land in agricultural use for a period of 30 years. The 10-year lease, raising leases will still continue, but we'll make a commitment to keep any land that's participating in this program in agricultural use for an additional 20 years. And that takes some of that risk off the lessee when they're really only able to control what happens on the property for 10 years.
Mindy, clarifying question. I thought I read in the packet that as we move from, I thought we were moving from 25% of net revenue to 30% of gross revenue.
Well, we really, it is, and I say net, it's only net in that the grassland carbon project developer takes off their 30%. The remaining 70 is then split 30-70 with us and the lessee. So our net percentage at the end, so it's, we have changed the lease terms. Before, the carbon project developer not only got their share, but they got to pull up all the project costs also. Right. Now they're incorporating those costs into their 30%. Okay. And that we will split them. So the term of net revenue isn't probably the most accurate at that point. Our percentage of 30% of the 30 is more like 18%, I think. So of the total gross revenue coming in. Right. But you're right. This project is going to be a standalone one. It was the first that the board did. It was kind of a pilot in a way. That said, it was our largest ranch. And from this point going forward, we will always be sharing 50-50% with our lessee. So, oh, and director? Yes, director.
A minimum of 50%.
A minimum of 50%.
Thank you.
And as we, I just want to say, as we, this program continues to mature and we learn, I think we'll be making tweaks over time.
So the carbon sequestration is essentially a commitment to keep it in grazing, right?
Not necessarily. There are carbon grassland programs that are just that. In this particular form of it, the lessee is making a commitment to significantly change how they manage the operation to increase the amount of carbon sequestration.
And is that measurable?
Yes.
They're going to measure the soil levels then?
Yeah.
And so, what was the estimation of their needed investment to do that again?
It really depends. They're going to be covering those investment costs. The lessee will have additional investment costs. The most significant cost involved with the carbon program is the measuring of that soil organic carbon. And it's done at year 0 when the project starts. It's done at year 5 and at year 10. And in between, there's different ways of estimating the amount of soil organic carbon that's sequestered in the soil. And that's done through kind of heavy and reporting back from the lessee to the carbon project developer. They're reporting and tracking where the cows are, how long they spend there. That can be done electronically through ear tags or collars, or it can also be done through recording through different kind of online tracking or like online databases where they actually say we move these cows with these ear tag numbers to this measure. And they also track it by aerial imagery and other data and drones in the in-between years.
And so the lessee, the person that's paying for this carbon sequestration, the corporation, is it based on those milestones? Like, I mean, you need to put 15% more carbon into the ground or sequester, or how is the payment allocated over time?
Based on the activities that are occurring and also other measurements like moisture and other things like that, the carbon project developers are estimating how much soil organic carbon is being kept in the soil or generated in the soil and kept there. They generate ecosystem service, or I'll just call them grassland carbon credits. They're selling them as they occur through the year. And they're doing this on all the branches that they're involved with. So they may have in their portfolio 200 ranches. They will be tracking and selling those. And at the end of the year, they assess, they do an audit of all, well, they have a record of all the credits they've sold, and then they divide the amount that they've been able to make and distribute those to the ranchers that have created those. I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, so they're doing more than estimating the carbon sequestered by looking at grazing patterns and moisture, right? They're actually going in and taking carbon samples out of the soil.
They do that. So they do that in the 5-year increments that I've mentioned.
Mhm.
In the interim years, they're estimating that. And then at year 5, there's a true up.
Mhm.
And so then they go out, they do the whole survey again, and they see how much carbon has actually been sequestered.
Okay.
Then they do it like a true up payment. If they've overpaid, they don't, the lessee or the grazing or the ranch operator doesn't have to repay the money, but they won't get any money that year or for the next 2 years if they significantly overpaid. If they've underestimated, then they true up and they give an additional bonus payment,
Okay, and the ranchers grazing it, the way they're going to increase carbon sequestration is through grazing patterns, I assume. Okay.
So regenerative grazing patterns that,
Yeah.
carry those practices have been demonstrated to increase the amount of soil organic carbon.
Okay.
So they're not just generating improved outcomes on the surface through improved vegetation and bringing kind of more native species back. They're also increasing the amount of soil organic carbon in the soil.
Mhm.
So that's why aside from the grassland carbon program, it's also why the state land board is so interested in having our lessees use regenerative grazing practices.
Right.
I mean, this is a way to actually, they could generate money for doing that. The record keeping is more intense, and they have to be submitting these reports. The cost of it is also significant. That's where the carbon project developer comes in. But what they found is that these practices can significantly increase soil organic carbon. So,
Tell me again, who negotiates the program? Are we in danger of this program changing, or how will we know this will continue as an ongoing revenue source?
well, it is a fairly new industry, if you want to call that like a model or business model. That said, it's been happening for about 5 or 10 years at this point. So we are on the leading edge of this, especially when we look at other state land boards or state trust lands across the West. That said, there are other ranchers and early adopters that are ahead of us and are now beginning to see these payments made out in years 5 or 6. It's our way of being innovative, but we are out there. We don't have the guarantees, beyond 10 years. But it's also an additional revenue opportunity for us that is really being missed at this point. And it will also lead to increased outcomes of stewardship, even if those revenues, amounts don't prove out the level that we're expecting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I'm unclear who either honors this. I mean, is it a federal program? Is it
These are private.
Yeah, like it's a private program.
Private contracts.
Yeah, these are voluntary carbon markets, so there's no federal or state requirements or regulations that require that people have to buy credits or use certain practices. So it's a voluntary market. So you have international companies like Amazon or Coca-Cola that are interested in making reductions in greenhouse gas.
What happens when the soil's saturated with whatever carbon it can carry? Are you paid to keep it in the ground? Or what happens conversely if there's a really horrible drought and we lose a lot of that carbon?
Right. Great question. So studies have shown that the amount of soil organic carbon kind of builds over the first 10 years and then begins to level off. They don't know exactly when and how exactly what that will be for any given property. But there is a 10-year initial kind of period where the carbon is increased. And then there's two 10-year periods where there's a storage carbon, where there's like a storage period. So those payments aren't as significant as they are the first 10 years, but there are still payments made, and it depends on for each given property, what that rate of soil increase would be. But yeah, so it appears that the significant payment is going to be coming in the early years of this, and then the storage agreement, the payments would decrease over time, but still be not zero. So some of these other, just to run through what the current terms are for the payment for ecosystem services rider, we're estimating a little over $500,000 a year would be coming in for this particular operation, this project. And over a 10-year period, it would be about $5.3 million. The rider acreage would be 81,771 acres, more or less. That's about 95% of the branch. There would be a 10-year lease rider. That would involve like an 18-month extension for their existing agricultural lease, their standard lease. Because these programs run in 10-year increments, we wanted, to have this run aligned, be aligned with the start of the lease. And so part of the biological carbon sequestration leasing policy is that if a lessee is in the first 5 years of their lease, the board, part of this program would involve an extension to make the end date of the first 10 year of the grassland carbon program concurrent with their agricultural grazing lease. In this case, it would be about an 18-month extension. And then the 30-year, there'd be 30 years for the carbon project term. The state land board would agree that we wouldn't be using this land for development for an additional 20-year period after the first 10 years. And it would also involve regenerative grazing and enhanced stewardship outcomes on the surface. On the lessee side, the lessee revenue share would be 70% of that, and that were net revenue after the carbon project developer has taken off their 30% and handled all the costs. Their estimated grassland carbon revenue is about $1.7 million a year, and over a 10-year period, that'd be $0.6 million. That's estimated. And this is based on the current value of carbon credit prices today. I've used the board packet explains an average value of about $35 per credit. They really are ranging between like $25 and $50. The initial estimates that I shared in the board packet last year was much less than that. They would involve grazing management and reporting requirements beyond what they normally do. Additional infrastructure costs would possibly be necessary for them to cover, especially if they're looking at using something like halter or vents to track where the cattle go. That's an additional cost that they'll have to bear. And then it's possible that grazing practices or extreme weather may not result in the expected carbon sequestration that we projected and would affect revenue. So just briefly, the continued terms that have not changed. Again, I've mentioned that they were going to use the same amount of acreage that the board approved in April 2025. That's 95% of the ranch, or over 81,000 acres. These 8 sections will still be removed for solar development, and there's an additional 2,000 acre buffer to account for existing of the ranch sites, infrastructure, and some potential new, things like new roads. Flying Diamond's 10-year grazing lease would be extended to coincide with the completion of the first 10 years of the grassland carbon lease. And a comprehensive regenerative grazing plan and reporting system will be used to track the increased soil sequestration and track compliance. The newer revised terms are the state land board would agree to keep land subject to the grassland carbon ecosystem services lease in ag use for 30 years. And again, that's new from last April, but it is now part of our biological carbon sequestration policy. The revised, the new term involves a revised revenue share structure. And this is for the state land board from the share of the gross profit to the share of the gross revenue. It seems we are taking out our need to audit all of their expenses, because we're going to be basing that revenue our revenue share on their gross revenue. What this means for Flying Diamond Ranch. Oh, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to underscore the importance of that point Mindy just made. By having the revenue share be of the gross revenue, the project developer is shouldering all of the overhead. And so I think that's really is significant. So that 30% of gross revenue that goes to the project developer then becomes a very reasonable rate. I think the standard, is under 30% for project development of these types of carbon projects. And so just wanted to, indicate that I think that's really gonna part of why we're looking at $530,000 a year. And as Mindy also mentioned, it gets complicated when you start to tease out what the expenses to the project developer are, and we didn't want to have that obligation. So that was just a really important point that I wanted to underscore.
Or take the risk that their expenses blow up for any particular reason.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
This is simple.
Yes,
Quick
sir.
question for Nicole. Can you describe at a high level what kind of activities the developer has to engage in to create the proper infrastructure? What are these activities?
Thank you, Commissioner Pribble. I could, but I think Mindy has the most detailed information. So I put that to
Yeah, sure. The most significant by far is the baseline monitoring of the soil organic carbon. So there's hundreds and hundreds of soil samples a meter deep taken with estimates and evaluating that for soil organic carbon, storing those samples. So that's by far the biggest cost, but they have other costs of annual monitoring, either driving by or drone flights or aerial kind of imagery. They have to register the projects. They have to, and a lot of that monitoring and verification has to be done by a third party, an independent third party. So there's all of those costs, and our initial receipt of their general terms that they have with all the other ranch operators that they're working with or landowners is very different, where they're capturing all those costs, and then they have, I don't want to disparage them, but other buckets of other undetermined costs. And they just opened up too many possibilities where there would be potential costs that we could actually have no revenue kind of resulting. And so we wanted to really go toward more of a framework that we use for our other ecosystem service projects, where we just get a cut of the gross revenue. So the more that they are able to sell the credits for, our interests are aligned there. But we don't have to get into complicated auditing of their expenses. We enjoy, I shouldn't say enjoy, but we do have more audit rights under oil and gas regulations that we do have some of these other industries. We may not be able to have the rights to audit all of their expenses. So we felt that this was a much more streamlined process. So, and I want to point out too, that this 30%, because of the size of the Chico Basin Ranch, this is a significant cost savings, if you will, in terms of what this ranch brings. Other ones may not have as much of the 30%, but we're negotiating with them at because the land board has land at scale, how we can get back to that 30% by bringing in more lands and using that as a standard. That is not the standard across the industry, nor is this share that we just get this share without having to go through, without them being able to remove all their costs. That's also not standard. So these are specific terms special to the land board.
Well done.
Just again, we've talked about how this is a much more straightforward process, similar to our other ecosystem service leases. It eliminates the need for the state land board to audit all of their expenses. And it finally, it streamlined the revenue payments to the state land board and the lessees. We will be receiving revenue just once a year at the end of the year, when they have an average of all the credit sales they've had over the year. And that would come kind of at the beginning of the new year. We increased the state land board share from 25% of the carbon credit revenue to 30% with Flying Diamond Ranch. And finally, for this particular project, we've also removed the base ground rent of $1.50 per acre. That's partly this was something that was put into the grassland carbon policy. We felt that this wasn't appropriate in this case. We're getting just that the way the revenue comes in, it didn't make sense for us to have this annual ground rent. And we're planning to come back to you with a revised policy that would remove this. So, any questions about any of these?
So if we're getting a percentage of gross revenue, we're talking about the totality of the carbon credits sold. The operator gets what percentage again?
30%?
And we get 30%?
No, we get 30% of the 70. So that comes out to about 18%, I think.
Okay. And I guess in a way it's a depleting asset. You can only stick so much carbon into the ground, can't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a depleting asset, but it's a capped asset, right? And this project is for a period of 30 years. So we don't know what will happen in 30 years. You'd mentioned too, if a drought comes along,
Kick the carbon back out.
yeah, that's all part of that model of what, if you lose carbon, but if you don't till the soil and turn that over, that carbon will stay in the ground for still a period of time.
I mean, I suppose we could argue that all our lessees, all our grazing people should get there, and not to be greedy on behalf of the state land board, but going back to goal number 1, it seems to me we should be getting a bigger percentage.
Yes. Yeah, and I will say that we will, this was our early kind of pilot. Well, did you want to remark it? Oh, I thought I saw you raise your hand. Yeah, this was something that we developed early on as it was kind of considered a pilot at the time.
Yeah.
Our understanding has significantly grown over the past year. I'm grateful that we've been able to secure a higher amount, but I think going forward, we're looking at very different terms for our other projects.
I'd like to add on to that, and that is, I think it's essential, particularly with a project that's as big and visible as this one is. It's really essential that it be successful.
Yeah.
And that the ranchers rewarded and expectations are met, because the landscape has been littered with a lot of promises and unfulfilled expectations in the ag community. So making this work for everybody on the front end is well worth, nominally not having maximized the percentage.
Okay.
And we do have another option. I mean, in terms of staff is going to be coming back in the coming months with a plan to show you how we're promoting this and communicating out to our lessees on our approach. There are other carbon project developers that don't operate like this, that we can bypass the lessee, just pay for the the soil organic carbon that's already in the ground. We feel though that's a less optimal version. Even though we get more of that revenue, we don't see the improved outcomes above the ground, and it's just capturing what's already there. It's not increasing it. So with that, I just have the recommendation. This is a lengthy one because it's got so many parts to it. It's in your board packet, and I can also just move directly to the board order, which is the same.
And what I'd like to say is we've got the ag lessee who would like to speak, but I want to make sure that there are no more questions, clarifying questions for Mindy before we invite the ag lessee to make a comment. Any other
question I have is, who invites this to the land? Is it the lessee, or do we do that, or?
That's a great question. In this case, we were approached by the lessee wanting to do this by Flying Diamond Ranch. It was part of their proposal that when they bid on this lease, that they were interested in doing this. And again, because we were just getting started and we wanted to, make a good step forward and work with, they've already done this on 2 or 3 of their other private ranches, so they're very familiar with it. Now it's time for us to do, to step out and to promote this idea more across all of our buses, like across the state.
So
that said, there are
the theme for as us talking about our strategic plan and how this is an example of what we want to do and hope to do a good deal more of it.
I will say there's a number of lessees eagerly waiting for us to finish these documents and ready to move forward. I think pretty quickly.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to offer a motion.
Okay, I think what we'll do is hear from the ag lessee, see if there's any public comment, and then I would love a motion.
Okay.
Bringing Will Johnson to the forum. Will, when you rejoin, you'll be able to manage your own mic and camera. We can see you, Will, when you're ready. Well, we can't, sorry, Will, we can't hear you. Nothing on our end has changed.
Can you hear me?
I can see you better. Try again.
Hello?
There it is.
Yeah.
Oh, well, sorry about that. Oh yes, I'm Will Johnson with the Flying Diamond, and I'm actually the family member that is out on the Chico Basin. So sure appreciate the time, and had no prepared deals. There was a question about the Grassroots Carbon, kind of their infrastructure, their efforts out here. All I can attest is like last August, I think it was probably 4 weeks, they had surveyors out here 6 days a week for, I didn't document it exactly, but 3 to 4 weeks. So the sampling that Mindy is referring to visibly looked like a very large undertaking. They were side by sides and literally 6 or 7 days a week for, I want to say 3 weeks. Don't hold me exactly, but a very large sampling deal. So I can just attest to that because they were out there for a long time. But yeah, I guess since you guys gave me a little time, yeah, just sure excited about this carbon deal. I think it is the frontier of this industry, and there's a lot of risk. I think probably on all, in this instance, 3 cases of landowners, the brokerage Grassroots, and the operators, us. And yeah, I think the upside or the example that could be set of showing how operators can generate additional revenue sources from management practices that are regenerative in nature, and additionality of that is something that sure attracted us to this, and how we brought Grassroots to the state on this property. And yeah, I just think there's some ripple effects or some neat things that could happen for regenerative conservation ag from this deal. And yeah, I think there's a lot of risk. We've been meeting with virtual fence companies, and that also is kind of new technology that shows a lot of promise, but also has not been as tested as much. And we're going to embark on a big undertaking financially and effort wise with that to do some of that additionality management practices to allow for the carbon sequestration. I think it's in theory, and there's more people on this call that can or this meeting that talks more in the science. But yeah, I think there is a little bit of theoretical or conceptual calculations, and it's based on actual sampling that they have taken. But at the same time, I mean, all this is a little bit of on the forefront, as Mindy was talking about and whatnot. including the technologies we're going to use through Halter or No Fence or Vince and whatnot. So again, I'm a little unprepared, so I, I raised my hand just to comment on what the surveying was. But yeah, I think we're real excited. I commend the state in taking more time on this. I think a year ago this all started, and yeah, I think there was some indications or developments that required further exploration and discussion and stuff. So the delay, though it being in a delay, has I think been warranted, and I think from that everybody's more informed, and our current situation is reflective, or the amendments that are being proposed, yeah, I think is from a more educated and informed position, and still sets up everything for a great trial run, I think. I don't know if there's any questions, or yeah, appreciate the time sincerely. And yeah, I wasn't really prepared to say anything, and I didn't know if I should, but yeah, I'm free to answer any questions if there's any, or just I'll stand by.
Any questions? Mr. Pribble?
Yeah, Mr. Johnson, Jim Pribble here. I'm curious, you mentioned risk several times. Could you describe what risk factors are most prominent in your mind?
Yeah, I think from our understanding, and we've worked with them in a smaller scale and have some familiarity with them, but yeah, I think, you know, we have to, on the front side, additionality is a big term on management practices. So, you know, through the virtual fencing, be whatever way, animal IDing, the GPS ear tags, and real documented animal grazing records, very detailed animal management on, yeah, I mean, I guess grazing plans, but it's much more detailed than that. And you got to designate herds to specific areas so that the technology can track it all and stuff. So yeah, I think again, on paper and in theory, everything seems pretty acceptable in management. But I mean, be it drought, be it health issues within your herd and stuff, it really limits what you can do within it. I think hopefully a relationship, a partnership, maybe some of that would be a little less cumbersome or hindrance. And yeah, I think in our experience in business, you know, again, theory and conceptual always is met in reality with unforeseen complications or difficulties. And yeah, I think we're committing to something that hasn't been proven on a scale like this. And I think there are just going to be some unrealized issues that evolve. And, you know, I think from our standpoint, just speaking from us, is we're confident in the partnership to handle that as it comes. But I mean, there's scenarios where that might not happen. And, you know, our operation will be greatly in that scenario like that, our operation, you know, have a lot of restrictions that we don't have on other places, and that can really create financial consequences or realities that are probably not in our favor. And then, yeah, implementing of all this technology. Again, there are virtual fences out there, and that is happening, but at the same time, it's still on the forefront of that technology. And, you know, there's a huge reliance of this additionality management practice on that technology. And I think this, again, the Chico has an amazing property. At the same token, it's a very large property, and things that may work in the Midwest or in smaller, or New Zealand, you know, in a smaller land mass, I think there potentially could be issues that those companies and that technology hasn't seen on scale of this in a intensive management application that the Fine Diamond is proposing with those technologies. I guess would be my answer to that. Any other risk we have with that? And then yeah, maybe this is more personal. I think it is a very untested industry. I think that's the stability and whatnot. I think and I hate to introduce that whole notion to this, but I mean, I just think it is a very youthful industry and very youthful approach and whatnot. And I think there's probably for all parties some awareness of some what entails from being on the forefront of a new industry.
Thank you, Will. All right, shall we see if there's any public comment on this matter?
You bet. Folks listening along online, if you were here to make a comment on this matter, please use the raise hand button and we'll bring you up so you can direct your comments to the board. 3, 2, 1, no raised hands.
Commissioners, any observations, comments, or items you'd like to share before we have a motion and a vote on this? All right, I believe Commissioner Heath had a motion ready to go.
I move the board approve the Grassland Carbon PES Rider 116132 as contained in our board packet.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Scanlon. Let's vote. Commissioner Pribble,
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
Commissioner Heath,
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
And I'm Mindy. This is exceptional work and what an opportunity. And that we get to do this with Chico. It's terrific.
I want to thank the staff that's helped. There's been
Yeah,
a tremendous
I'm
work
sure.
getting this.
+1 on that, and the chair votes yes,
Chico
so
votes.
motion carries 5-0. And as to our next agenda item, I think we're going to have a pause to enter into executive session.
We're going to request that. You'll get to decide it. Is now just afternoon.
Indeed.
Hello, my name is Ed Hamrick. I'm an assistant attorney general and I represent the State Board of Land Commissioners. And earlier this morning, the board was considering a agenda item. Sorry. Right climate. Was considering the agenda item for the request for review on the competitive bid for ag lease 118096 in Yuma County. And the requester raised some issues regarding deadlines and bid requirements. I'd like to request an opportunity to go into executive session to discuss legal questions regarding the deadlines and requirements for the process, and I suppose also potential litigation related to those matters. Executive session is authorized to discuss these matters for attorney-client communications under 24-6. 4023A 2 and 3 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. And in a moment, I'll ask you for that motion, but I also just want to remind you and everybody that executive session will be to discuss attorney-client communication matters. It's not an avenue to make decisions, and the board will not be making a decision in executive session. So with that said, I'd request a motion to go into executive session.
Make a motion, we go into executive session.
Second by Commissioner Pribble. Commissioner Pribble,
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
Commissioner Heath,
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
The chair votes yes. We have a quorum.
Thank you.
It's approved.
So for folks online, we will be closing out access for the executive session. I'm not quite sure mechanically how that will happen, and Mr. Massey may sedate more, but I just want to give you a heads up that we'll be closing out online access for this executive session, and for folks in the room, we'd ask for you to step outside while we
handle executive session. Yeah, probably does. Thank you.
I had an initial plan and it's actually not gonna work, so folks listening along online, my apologies. But I am going to have to ask you to exit the webinar at this point. So feel free to drop off. The link that you used to get to this call will still be available to rejoin later. But you will be prevented from joining while we are in an executive session. If you do not dismiss yourself, my dismissal will prevent you from rejoining this webinar following exec. So if you do it yourself, you're better off. That also includes my analyst friends. Katie, I don't need you to hang around in this case. If you'll exit, I appreciate it. Thank you. She couldn't hear the thank you, but I'm a nice person.
I'll testify.
So the reason that I need to do this is because I'm going to use the Zoom record function to record a unique recording of the executive session. But I can't do that if I have the mics muted, which I originally was going to do. So everybody else needs to leave. Ash, I'm looking at you, Ben, Alicia, Leanne, Polly, Lindsay. Depart, please. All right, start kicking people out.
Here comes the massacre.
And it's time.
It was working.
So I'm going to break the recording.